Hello friends, welcome to Indian Temples YouTube channel. Today we have a very special guest with us. We have a mythologist who has her field of expertise in Hindu mythology. We have the author of this beautiful book, Adbhut. Here you can see the book, and the name of the author is Meena Arora Nayak. Her field of expertise is Hindu mythology. She has especially special interest in myths of Mahabharata. She has authored a monograph about the Mahabharata. The title is Evils in the Mahabharata. Additionally, she has written multiple books on the same topic, on the topic of mythology. And her most recent addition to this list of books is Adbhut, Marvelous Creatures of Indian Mythology and Folklore. So, welcome, Meena. Welcome to our Indian Temples YouTube channel.
Thank you, Dinesh. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah. So, the first thing, Meena, I wanted to know, how is your life journey been? What inspired you to study mythology, and how has this journey been so far?
My journey has been wonderful. It's been a good life. I'm at a place where I'm totally at peace with myself. I have a little grandson who's about a year old, and I'm so in love with him. So it's a good time in my life. As regards to mythology, I grew up with mythology. My parents are they're conservative Hindus, but they didn't teach me religion till much later in my life. So the stories that they used to tell me when I was growing up, my bedtime tales, so to speak, were stories from mythology. My father was a storyteller, so
Okay.
I heard about all the wonderful myths about Ram and Krishna and his little antics and everything as I was a little child, and that got me interested in mythology as stories more than religion. Like I said, I didn't learn about religion much later. So really, these became my bedtime tales. And then, as a result of that, I taught when my daughter was growing up. These are the stories that I told her, and I'm hoping that now that her son is is coming to an age where he can understand stories, she's going to continue the legacy of telling these mythological tales to her child as well.
Interesting. So, like most of the mythologists, the grooming began at the very early age of your life, right?
You could say that, yes, absolutely. So yes, I became very familiar with mythology from a wonderful perspective of storytelling.
Okay. And also, being familiar with the stories is a different thing. And when you are writing a book, you have to do a lot of research and study as well. So, what was the research methodology that you used? How did the research go?
That's a good question. You're absolutely right. Telling stories is one matter, but writing about them requires a certain depth that
Yeah.
of course the surface story is wonderful, but in order to write a book like Adbhut, which isn't just stories, it actually includes analysis, it includes other perspectives, and other versions of the myth, etc., etc. So yes, it did. There's a lot of research that went into it. I use both primary sources and secondary sources. In other words, I'm the straight on myths came directly from, let's say, the Purans. They're a storehouse of stories. So if the stories that are just myths came from the Purans, from the various Purans, and the stories that were analyzed, I used a lot of secondary sources. So I'm a researcher. I call myself a researcher. I love research. So it was a lot of articles and books and what other scholars are saying, what other cultures are saying. Indian mythology is such an international discipline. Basically, everybody across the world is familiar with that, and so there are other scholars in other countries that have a lot to say about Indian myths. So just reading a lot of material and putting it all together, and so it was a whole journey of finding out about myths that are stories that I thought I knew, but really it gave me all this research gave me a whole new perspective and depth and understanding. And I want to say joy as well, because it actually brought me to a place where I felt so gratified that these were from my culture.
Yeah, I can very much relate to what you just mentioned. Writing about mythology or writing about these stories gives all new, all different perspective to your life. I myself, being an author on the same topic, I can definitely relate to this. Friends, Meera is currently situated in USA. She teaches English and mythology at community college in Northern Virginia Community College in USA. So, have you always been a US resident, or you recently shifted there?
No, oh well, I've been here for a long time. I haven't recently shifted, and I haven't always been a U.S. resident. I came here to study, so I did my master's here. I came to study writing actually. So creative writing is what I want to say. If I tell you the year, it's going to give away my age, but I don't mind. So I came in 1984. It's been a long time. It's been over 30 years, and so yes, I I consider myself as belonging to both places. I love the US; it's a great country, but I haven't lost touch or attachment to India. If I don't visit India for a little, for a year, my heart starts hankering. So I still consider that home, even though of course my home is here now, but I consider India home. So yes, I've been here for a while.
Yeah, 1984 was the year when I was born. So, I can definitely say it has been a really long time. So, so how has the experience been being a resident in USA and still studying Indian mythology, Indian Puranas, and the stories? Was it really difficult, or was it not that much difficult?
um, Not difficult. I want to say not difficult, because I mean, education is open anywhere in the world, really, in most countries. Let's put it this way. And so, whatever you want to study, you can always find places where you can study it. You can find the universities that you want to study in, etc. And Indian mythology, anyway, is such a popular field. I don't want to say Indian mythology, but Indian studies. Such a popular field that it's not at all difficult to study that. But like as I mentioned, I didn't come to study mythology. I came to study creative writing. But when I decided to shift my field into mythology, which was actually soon after, I was able to find people that I could study with. And the most interesting thing I want to that I discovered studying mythology here. And let me first preface this by saying, because I did not study mythology in India, so I really don't know how it is in India. However, I have looked at libraries and college libraries and university libraries. I've done a lot of research in the Indian university libraries. The access I have to materials and to learning, to scholars from all over the world in translations. So we're always limited by what we can read. I can read certain languages, I can't read other languages. I can read Hindi, I can read and of course English. I'm very, very Sanskrit, I can read, but it's a laborious effort. So I'm limited to what I can read in translation. Therefore, it's easy for me to access the material. They are very easily accessible in the US. The internet has made everything easier anyway. But I think that is one privilege I've had, that I've been able to look at both the Western perspective and the Indian perspective, because all these are actually easily accessible.
Okay, that's really interesting because the celebrities that I have interviewed so far are mostly based in India. This is the first time I'm interviewing someone who is based outside India and who has been resident outside India for a long time. So it really gives me a different perspective as well. Okay, you just mentioned about Indian studies and Indian mythology. There are two different phrases used. Even recently in India as well, there are many people who believe that mythology is a wrong word to be used. When I post about temples or some mythological folklores on my Instagram page as well, I often receive many messages or comments that tell me that I should not use the word mythology. So, what is your view about this? Is mythology the right word to be used, or do you
I
think
was
otherwise?
Let me ask you a question back, Dinesh. I'm not sure why they tell
Okay,
you not to use mythology. I'm sorry, I don't understand the
okay.
context. Please
Uh,
explain to me.
Let me explain you the context. The like the dictionary meaning of mythology can be seen in two ways. One is mythology is something that is not proven, the historical parts that are not proven or that don't have any evidence. And the other word, especially myth, when we say the word myth, it can also be translated as folklores that are not true, the folk stories that are not true. So that is the part where most of them have objection. That if you are calling it as mythology, you are basically saying that they are not true stories. So that's why they object to use of the word mythology.
Actually, that is absolutely incorrect. So sorry to tell you this, and to your readers and listeners, because myth is really not fiction. It's not fictitious. The intrinsic value of myth is actually truer than the real truth that we know. Our truth is also relative. So myth
Yeah.
is actually that truth that is deep inside us. I'll give you an example. So let's say that when Dashrath, when Ram goes to exile, right? But that's a myth. The story is about Ram and Mahabharata. So in one perspective of it is that these are myths, these are stories, right? Let's say that there are certain section of society that believes that these are stories. But I'm giving an example of to tell you how true myth is. So, for example, when he's sent away to his 14 years of exile, and the sorrow that Dashrath feels at his departure, you're aware of that, right? It's a whole section
Yeah.
of the Brahman that is so beautiful and so touching that you have to be very insensitive not to burst into tears. It's such a gripping piece, right? That truth of Dashrath's sorrow at losing his son is so true. It's the truest truth, right? It's the sorrow of any father across the world at losing a son. How can that truth be fiction? That truth is actually, so myth doesn't, the story may be fiction if you believe that the stories that maybe Ram didn't exist, maybe this is a story, which is fine. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but the truths that are invested in myth are so true that every person, they resonate with every person. So that is why it's called. And so the yes, there's one dictionary definition that says fiction, myth is fiction, but really that is not a correct definition when we use it in terms of mythology. So mythology, once again I repeat, is actually truer than the truth that we even know. Intrinsically, it's the truth.
Yeah,
It's the truth of the human experience, let's put it this way.
that is a really interesting way to look at it, interesting perspective, definitely. So you are also a novelist. You have written a novel about Razia Sultan's historical novel as well on Razia Sultan. So
Yes.
how different is the experience of writing a novel and writing a mythological book? How different it is?
That's a good question. I think the impulse is the same. The
Mm.
impulse is the same. It's to write what you know best. And to write what touches, if it touches you, it's going to touch your readers. And so when I came to study, like I said, I wanted to be a novelist. So that was my first imperative, to become a novelist. And so and then writing about mythology is something that I know is as I've known as a child. So the two, when the two meet, they make a wonderful mixture. Writing about Razia Sultan was so two or three parallels I want to draw. The research is the same, because I had to do, because it's a historical novel. I had to, for any novel for that matter, it doesn't just have to be historical. Research is imperative, and the research process is the same. You do the same kind of in-depth learning. You read scholars, you read whatever texts you're able that are available, etc. And then the writing of it may be a little bit different, because the writing of a novel is more creative. You don't have to base it in facts or stuff that you don't need to make sure that everything that you're quoting or citing is accurate, because it's imagination.
Getting to the topic of your recent book, Adbhut. I recently got to read this wonderful book, and when I first looked at the cover, it shows a tortoise on it, and so definitely I realized that it probably talks about the Kacha avatar of Vishnu. That may be the story. And firstly, I wasn't really. I have always been very what you can say, very much drawn towards all the animals that are written in our Puranas, like there are Sharab or there is Yalis. So they have a larger than life image of those animals. So I firstly hope that your book talks about all of those creatures from our Indian mythology only. But when I looked at the book, I was very pleasantly surprised that you have also covered animals from different kind of mythology or different religions as well, different religion folklores. So maybe I would like you to throw some light on the this aspect of your book.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So when you mentioned what kind of research you did, it obviously included a primary and secondary sources of all the cultures that I've tried to incorporate in the book. Because see, India is not just Hindu, right?
Yeah,
It is such a vast country, and we have so many different cultures, and they all sort of intersect. It isn't that they're all separate, because they've been there, because it's such an ancient country, and we've had these cultures for thousands and hundreds and thousands of years. The cultures have actually they've started intersecting. So there are places where there's similarity. That's what I mean. There's similarity between them. For example, the human impulse is the same in all of them. And so when I was writing not just this book, an earlier book, the Blue Lotus, which are myths and folk tales of India, I I needed to make sure that when I say the word India, I mean India, not just Hindu India, but Christian India and Jewish India and Muslim India and Buddhist India and Jain India, because India is the country for all these cultures, right? Therefore, a book that mentions India in the title cannot just be about Hindu mythology. And that this includes tribal cultures as well. So if you must have noticed that the book includes folklore from tribal cultures, that's they're just as valid Indians as anybody else, right? So therefore it was very important for me. And yes, the research took me into areas related to these cultures as well. And so that was a very intentional effort, and I'm so glad that you mentioned it, because it's a very important element for me. It's very close to my heart.
Another important aspect of your book that I found was when I mentioned that you have considered folklores from different regions of different religions as well. So there was another aspect of your book that I really liked. That when writing about those and creatures, you have segregated them as creatures of the sky, creatures of the land, or creatures of the water. That way. I hope I'm not giving out a lot of information about the book, because I don't want to reveal everything of the book, because I want to leave something for the readers to read and enjoy. But yeah, that was one part that I have also liked very much about the book.
Oh, yes, thank you. I appreciate that. That was a struggle. So that decision was a struggle. I wanted to. I had these. Once I'd collected these tales, not the whole, not the entire book. I had collected some tales. I wanted to put them in some kind of category. I wanted to
Yeah.
put them in sections that made sense, that there was that would create a cohesion between the stories, but they would also be separate sections. And so that was my intention. um, when I racked my brain, I explored various, elements, saying, oh, maybe I can put them in like the emotions that people feel, and I put them in that category, because my first book was about all the human emotions. And then literally, this was an epiphany. One morning, I woke up and said, oh my God, creation myths. So that morning, I reread the creation myths from the cultures that I was using, and of course I knew what I was looking at, but it was reaffirmation that all creation myths, because in all creation myths across the cultures, um, living beings are created at the same time in categories, one after the other, and so and including human beings. And so that order was what I decided on. I cheated a little bit, because in all creation myths, the creatures that are first created are creatures of the sea, actually. I put creatures of the air first, not to give away anything to the readers, because the first story, Simurg, is one of my favorite stories. And so I wanted to begin with that. So I cheated a little bit, but really that was what it was. It came from the creation myths, where beings are created in the order that, the beings that are the supreme beings that are creating these living creatures have an order in their mind. So that's the order. These are myths about the cosmos, right?
Yeah.
So it aligned very well with my intention.
Okay. To those who are watching this video, we often see books, the books of mythology, as books of stories only. But this is one book that goes beyond only stories. It gives a lot of detailed information about different kind of creatures that existed in different folklores and different myths. So I would definitely suggest you to read this book. It's available on Flipkart or Amazon, or it's available in many bookstores as well. So, Meena, you have been writing for a long time. Yeah, I can see you have written more than 15 books. I went through Amazon link and found out that you have written more than 15 books so far. So, how did your writing process started? What was, you already mentioned that you have done graduation in creative writing. So definitely, I can also feel that in your writing style in the book that the writing is very profound, very interrogating. Sorry, very intriguing and very much interesting as well. So, how did your story start? The writing story. When did you start writing, and how did it all go?
Thank you, Dinesh, for appreciating my writing. I That's a tough question to answer. It's, I want to say, and it sounds like a cliche, that I've always wanted to be a writer. As far as I remember, just like everybody else. I mean, writing little stories was like fun for me. I kept a diary, as most children do. And then what I remember specifically and very interestingly, is that in college, I was actually creating stories about my roommates. And I
Okay.
would write like a little novella and hand it to them. And so that's my first real memory of writing something that is substantial. It used to be a fun exercise. We used to laugh about it later, but that's what I remember. So if and the most fun was if any of my roommates had a boyfriend, or were interested in somebody, I would create a little love story about it and hand it to them as a little novella and laugh about it. So that was my first attempt at actually becoming a writer. And then I think it just became a part of what I do. I love reading stories. I love telling stories. The best way to bring that to fruition was to become an actual writer. And so yes, and that's all. I think I've always wanted to be a writer, really. So it was not a difficult choice for me to make to become a writer. And then I knew that, once I finished my education in India, I was I think I have a friend in America who was visiting India, and just I didn't know that creative writing programs existed in America. And she came and she said, why don't you, if you want to be such a writer, why don't you come to the US to study writing? And my father's, like I said, very conservative, and he was surprised, and he says, you have to study writing? If you want to be a writer, just write. So I was like, no, I really want to study writing. So that's how. And then yes, so I've been writing, let's say, most of my life. Good or bad, readers will decide, but yes, that's been a part of my life for almost forever.
Yeah, you mentioned it correctly. Good or bad, the readers will decide. That's the spirit
Yeah.
most of the writers should have in their life, because writing is not just about publishing a book or earning some money through it. Writing is
Yes.
all about passion. That's I agree with, and that's very nice way to put it
And
out.
I want something was one thing else I want to mention, Dinesh. So if especially for those of your listeners who may be thinking about going into writing, it's not an easy field. It's not that you write and you get published. You have to be ready for rejection. The first thing a writer has to be prepared for is that it's going to be rejected. Even if you've written a masterpiece, it's going to be rejected. You have to be ready to take that and to not give up. And that's an important aspect, to not give up, to keep plodding. After so many years of writing, I have one writers or thinking about going into writing is the discipline of it. So it isn't that the mood takes me, that, oh, I'm in the mood of writing, I think I'll write. It's literally the discipline. I write every day like it's a job. Whether I feel like writing or I don't, or not, I sit down at my desk and I write. Some of it is probably trash and I throw it away at the end of the day saying, oh my God, I can't believe that that I wrote that. But if you can get maybe a few sentences, a page of writing a day, that feels like you've done something. I mean, that's what it's, the discipline. Basically, you have to write whether the mood is there or not.
Yeah, in fact, that was going to be my next question. I was about to ask you, what suggestion would you give to upcoming authors, or those who are willing to write, or those who are thinking of writing? So thank you for answering that question in advance.
You're welcome. You're welcome, and good luck. I mean, really, good luck.
Yeah.
It is such a fulfilling process. So even it, and it doesn't have, you don't have to wait till the end of the book or the end of a story to feel fulfilled. Every image that you create that is working is in itself an epiphany. It's such a wonderful feeling. You feel like you have accomplished. And so, yes, so good luck.
Yeah. Meena, I'm sure after this interview goes live, there would be many of our readers or visitors who would like to get in touch with you regarding their stories or regarding their writing, or maybe to know more about the book or have a chat with you. So, what's the way to get in touch with you? Are you available on social media platforms? Or
Unfortunately, I am not at all on social media. I am maybe an old timer from the old school, but I'm not. I don't. I'm not. I'm not comfortable with social media. I'm also so no, there's no way. However, I am very available, as you know, on email, and I'm very prompt with emails. Another way to get in touch with me is through Aleph. So the editors and of Aleph, immediately, as soon as they get a message for me, I get it almost immediately. So absolutely get in touch with Priyanjana or any of the other editors who I worked with, and they are more than happy to convey messages, and I'm more than happy to respond to readers. And so that's one way. We could do another Zoom session at some point with question and answers, Dinesh.
friends, I will be sharing the contact details of the Aleph publication that have published her book. And after you read the book, you can definitely give your feedback to the contact details of the publication, and definitely they will reach to the author. uh, Bina, most of the questions that I had on my mind have already been answered. Is there anything you would like to share at the end of interview?
Well, no, first of all, thank you for once again for inviting me. I'm hoping that the book Adbhut is like I said, it's a unifying book, right? It brings the cultures together, and I hope that spirit comes through, and then when readers are reading it, they see that they see how it bridges. And I really want this to, that's one purpose. I want the book to bridge communities and cultures. I also want them to see the wealth that is in their own culture. And so they're not just stories. There really is a sense of pride in this book. And I hope that the readers who read this book feel that pride for themselves.
Thanks a lot, Bina. Friends, this was Meena Arora Nayak. She is a mythologist, author, and she is currently based in USA, where she teaches English and mythology. And she is also a novelist. She has written many different books. And her most recent book, as I have already mentioned, is Adbhut, Marvelous Creatures of Indian Myth and Folklore. So, friends, I hope you have liked the interview with Meena Arora Nayak. Thanks, Meena, for being part of our show, part of our YouTube interview. It was really a pleasure having you on our Zoom talk. And definitely we will again be in touch. We will be again doing some interview at some point of time. I am really hopeful on that part.
Thank you, Dinesh. I appreciate it.